Hello, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you're watching us from. I want to say welcome to this epic episode of the Africa Civility Summit. This is just the third day we've been moving on this wonderful summit where we are discussing with different thought leaders. We want to talk. We're talking about how we can effectively build a sustainable Africa, and I want to you need to remind yourself that this summit has been going on since Monday the 12th and goes on up to Friday the 16th. And we've been having great and powerful thought leaders from across the world joining us and speaking to us in a very powerful manner. I am Professor Mateus Mutola, the Africa Civility Educator, all the way from Mozambique, Africa. Today, we are deliberating on strategies for building a new sustainable Africa. We know that for Africa to move forward and drive for unity, be self determined, be free from all sorts of oppression and suppression, progress and attain collective prosperity, she needs to adopt new strategies for inclusive and sustainable development. And today, it's an honor to have in the studio Dr. Joseph Nyanchama. Dr. Joseph Nyanchama is a global transformational thought leader. He's a man of a great and a global impact. He delivers, he's a man who delivers high energy messages to encourage young people to shake off mediocrity and live up to their greatness in whatever position that they may find themselves serving. So I want to welcome you, Dr. Joseph, into this summit today. And I want to say thank you so much for giving yourself time to be part and parcel of this summit.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. It's my great pleasure to be here in this summit.
Yes, Dr. Joseph, we know, like I was just saying, that in order for Africa to move forward, in order for Africa to drive for unity, in order for Africa to be self-determined, in order for Africa to be free from all sorts of oppression and suppression, progress and attain collective prosperity, she needs to adopt new strategies for inclusive and sustainable development. Now, Dr. Joseph, when we talk about sustainable development, what exactly are we talking about? When we talk about an Africa that sustains itself, from your viewpoint, Dr. Joseph, what kind of Africa would that be?
First of all, Professor, it's my great pleasure. Let me first of all say what my mission is. My mission is, as a person, is to transform the latent energy of the Kenyan people and others in the rest of the world into active energy to enable them live a fulfilled life. That is how I wish to live. That is how I envision my legacy, because I want to be a man of high yield, both in life and death. Having said that, Prof, remember the word sustainability comes from the word to sustain. That whatever strategies that Africa must come up with should not only live within the current generation, but go beyond. That any development that come out of the strategies that are put in place shall in fact benefit the future generations. Remember what even the Indians believe. In fact, there is a proverb from India that says that we have not inherited this nation from our ancestors. We have borrowed from our children, and we must return it back with interest.
Wow.
Having said that, Professor, it means that whatever actions Africa do arising out of strategies must go beyond their leadership or the current generation.
Right.
And what is surprising, Professor Mateus, is that you use the word oppression. Allow me to make a statement.
Right.
If you walk consciously in the mindset of a queen, you will find it difficult to submit yourself someone less than a king. I repeat, if you walk consciously in the mindset of a queen, you will find it difficult to submit yourself to someone less than a king. I am talking about the mindset of dominion as espoused in the whole book, the book of Genesis, chapter 1:26. Unfortunately, Mateus, Africa still believe that they are not as strong as other people, particularly from the West. In this particular summit, we want to bring hope to them that they have capabilities of becoming successful, not only in their time, but also in the future generations. And this is the confidence we want to put into them. And for them to be successful, therefore, they must come up with strategies that would enable Africa develop. When I talk about strategy, allow me to borrow heavily from one of the leadership guru, Dr. Peter Drucker. He said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Professor, it does not matter how many strategies we will put in place. If our culture is wrong, whatever strategies we come up with will be in vain. Remember, Professor, Africa is not short of strategies. In fact, there are so many strategies that have been prepared which are gathering dust in the shelves. And the problem we have in Africa is inaction.
Okay.
They never act on them. They never implement. They have a certain mindset which is in fact bustling to the whole world. They think developing a continent is moving from conference to conference, giving talks, going to workshops, preparing strategic papers, which they never act on. Professor, I'm proposing
Yes,
the
sir.
most critical thing that Africa needs to do is to move the strategic papers from the shelves into the field. I mean, they need to implement. We have a challenge of implementation gap. And I hope in this particular summit, leaders are listening. And it is clear, in fact, Africa does not lack resources.
That's right.
It lacks resourcefulness. Africa does not lack resources. It lacks resourcefulness. What do I mean? We never act. The fact that we have natural resources like minerals and others, that is not enough. We must come up with strategies that convert those resources into both marketable products and services so that we acquire what we call the competitive advantage. We will never have a competitive advantage until we convert the resources we have into marketable products and services. We never add value. We don't have those strategies that will enable whatever resources we have or endowed with, which are natural, we never convert them so that we take advantage of the competitive advantage. Professor, how do you get the competitive advantage? How do you take advantage of the competitive advantage? Africa needs to acquire 4 critical attributes and focus on them. The first attribute is resilience. Resilience. We must, first of all, be resilient to develop a continent which is difficult to allow in Africa. Many
Hello, Dr. Joseph. We are losing you. Dr. Joseph, we are losing you through internet connection. And as Dr. Joseph was speaking, he's been out and out. Hopefully he'll be able to connect anytime from now. But basically, Dr. Joseph was here addressing a very key and important issue. He was speaking about the critical uh, steps that Africa needs to acquire and be able to develop. And we know that he just said that Africa does not lack resources, but Africa does lack resourcefulness. And that's where Dr. Joseph was basically talking about. And the other thing he was mentioned to say is that Africa does not believe that they have the power to dominate. Instead of what we do is look up to the West. And then that's where we need to understand there's Africans that Africa does have the necessary resources and also the strategies, but now Africa needs and must act. Now, Dr. Joseph was also saying that the other challenge of Africa is that Africa does not act. Africa does has lots of resources that are just collecting dust, but then Africa does need to begin to act in order just to be able to be the Africa that we want and Africa we all aspire to have as Africans as a whole. And Dr. Joseph is back. Are you able to hear me now, Dr. Joseph?
Yes, sorry, I got interrupted. Yes, I'm able to hear you, Prof.
Yes, thank you
Yeah,
so much. You are building on the four strategies that Africa needs to acquire, and we're building on resilient. You want to continue from there?
yes, I was on resilient. You know, we must be resilient enough to build a continent. You know, when we talk of resilience, we mean both cohesive and a coherent
Okay.
society. A cohesive continent or society or a nation is a nation or a continent that cannot be destabilized by outside forces. So the
Mm,
first thing, you can come up with the strategies, and if in fact respective nations from continent are not cohesive, then I mean, how are you going to implement those strategies? That is why I said we must, in fact, acquire the four critical attributes. The first one, which I said, is, of course, resilience, the capacity to build nations to be both cohesive and coherence, being
mm,
cohesive and coherent. Why I talk of cohesive are nations which are united. And once now you are united, there is the aspirations to build the state as political units. And that is why we say being cohesive without being coherent is like having a body without the soul.
mm,
Therefore, we must have both a continent which is both cohesive and coherent.
mm.
That is the first thing that we need to do. Professor, if you travel Africa and you look at the level of poverty and the hunger, which in fact has come out of a consequence of an incohesive and an incoherent society, then it will sink your heart. And that is why the first thing is being resilient to build a cohesive and a coherent society. That is
Yes,
the first attribute.
Dr. Joseph. Before you go into we go any further, allow me just to chime in. When you talk about being resilient, I understand that some are talking about being able to resist the invasion, quote unquote, invasion from outside forces or outside countries or people from other continents, right? And then my question would be, how can African governments be so much resilient, like to resist outside invasion into their countries?
You see, first of all, being resilient as citizens of a continent, you must also acquire the attribute, the inherent attribute, with clear resolute of building your continent or your society.
Okay.
Initiate, convert resources, resist, and if you are weak, you cannot resist.
Mm,
Resilience means you make a conscious resolution that you must stay together to protect the interests of your society. And you should not allow divisive kind of politics to be imported from outside to come and divide you. That is why, Professor, do you know Africa, by the way, never dread among itself? Why? It is deliberate. They divide, and then in the division and conflict, they come in and take resources, especially the natural resources. When you talk of African Union, I wonder what is the objective of African Union? It was to address part of the mandate to help acquire the first attribute, Professor, the first attribute, which it hasn't. In fact, if anything, the same union has been used still to divide Africa. And that is why I said deliberately we must acquire this attribute for us even to enjoy the competitive advantage. How can you harness resources in Congo, for example, when there is conflict, there is internal wars instigated by outside forces? You cannot, Professor. You can't. So this attribute must be acquired. How shall it be acquired? And that's why I began that we must work consciously like other people from the West. We were created to dominate the earth. And that's why I talked about, and remember this, Professor, when I talked about working consciously in the mindset of a queen, I am not talking about, I'm not talking about a superficial position. I'm talking about a mentor and spiritual disposition. This is what I'm talking about.
Right.
So the first attribute is resilience. Professor Mutola, if we cannot have that resilience, or others, whether we go to conference to build the strategies, how do you build a nation with eternal conflict? How? That is why we must deliberately address the four attributes for us to enjoy the competitive advantage, or we take that advantage to trade with others. And this is why I began with the first attribute, which is resilience. The second attribute.
Just stop there, Dr. Joseph. Before we go into the second attribute, maybe one of our viewers may have the following question. Is it we Africans fail to stay strong and firm? We fail to protect our resources. We fail to, let's maybe just give you an example. In Mozambique, our first president after independence, Samora Machel, his mind was that he used to say publicly, I was not born yet, I was still a child and all that, but I could listen from his speeches from back then that he used to say that every resource within the land or within the territory of Mozambique must first benefit Mozambicans. But then it's like history tells us that after he passed away, there's been a shift in our country. Our resources do not benefit like the majority of the masses in the country. Now, the question is this because of greedy from our political leaders? Are they that much greedy that whenever they are in power, they just think of themselves and nobody else? themselves, themselves, their children, their pockets, all that, and the rest has to struggle eternally. Is it greed, or could it be that there's fear of foreign army invasion?
Um, I think you are a scholar, Mateus, on your own right. I want to ask back a question. Is it by default or is it intentional that strong leaders who have the interest of the people at heart never live long to actualize the visions so that the citizens benefit? Is it by default or by design? Let me tell you. That's why I talked about being resilient to build your continent. And I will tell you without fear of contradiction, any strong leader who will emerge to protect the resources of his or her society, his life is in danger. And that's why I talked about the external forces.
Right.
They will never allow, I'm telling you, a strong leader who has seen vision for his people, because they know if they allow him to live long, Africa will become so strong and it will rule the world. Because, by the way, civilization started from from the southern region of Africa.
Right.
Yes. Where did civilization begin from? Let us read history. From southern Africa, those regions. And we have allowed the West to target our strong leaders, and they put puppets in leadership who pretend that they have the interests of our people at heart, which I would say authoritatively that they don't. They don't. And I've given you assignment, Professor. Is it by design or by default that any strong leader who will emerge does not live long? Why?
And most of them are even called, the quote unquote dictators, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Sorry to say this, I don't know how you are aligned. As much as people hate Gaddafi, let me be honest. Why? Why did he have to die? They saw he was a strong man in terms of organizational skills to bring to that.
Dr. Joseph, I think we are losing you. Yes, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, I think we once again lost Dr. Joseph. Maybe I'm sure he's having some internet connection. You're still in?
Yeah, I'm in. Are you?
Yes, I am. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Please go on.
Okay, sorry. Sorry for that. I think my internet seems not to be very stable.
It's okay, sir. I understand.
Yes. And you see what I was talking about. And I think we, Professor, we are on the course of talking about strategies, because we don't want to convert this summit into like a classroom, but we must get first things first. That's why we say, what attributes do we need to acquire first of all, so that we get the competitive advantage? That's why we have talked about the first one. We were on resilience. So if we can't become resilient enough, to be able to build both a cohesive and a coherent society so that outside forces do not come and take our resources to go and use it to become rich. And then they draw to us peanuts, use the same resources to manipulate us, to use the few leaders to divide the continent. And that's why we must acquire the first attribute, which is resilience. And that is why I felt that I must discuss in that format.
Right.
Because in any case, Professor, let me tell you, go to any country, first even the Minister of Planning and Development, ask for the strategies for their nations. You will be surprised. Are you getting me, Prof?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm here.
You would be surprised. That therefore tells us what is the problem. The strategies are there. They are there. Or what we need to do is to acquire certain attributes. After we've acquired that, we move straight. Begin implementation. We have a problem of implementation. And that's why this particular conversation, I felt that I needed to talk about the 4 key attributes. If we acquire them and religiously from inside resolve ourselves to follow, we will transform Africa. By the way, do you know, Prof, that a country called Singapore, it reached a point and just developed 3 pillars, and in fact they became the centerpiece of the development agenda of Singapore. They came to 3 MPH. M stands for meritocracy. Meritocracy means if Professor Tchorere is the one who knows the job, he gets the job. It doesn't matter where he was born, whether it's a son or a peasant. That is, and the leader there was resolute on that. MPH. P stands for pragmatism. And they used to believe.
Dr. Joseph, we sort of lost you a bit on the first letter. Maybe please repeat. We can hear now well again. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I was trying to compare how Singapore came up with just 3 letters, 3 pillars in short. The first, MPH, meritocracy, from merit. That's it. They agreed as a country or as a nation that only the people who merit get the job they understand, so that we produce maximum. And then P stands for pragmatism. And where they believed, whatever ideology that you hold, so long as it works, that's what we follow. In fact, one of the Chinese guy was so excited with the model, and they said, so long as it does not matter whether the cat is black or white, so long as it catches the mice.
Okay.
That cat is good. That's what pragmatism is. And then the last pillar is honesty. And that's it. Honest here now was addressing that if you go out of the way and involve yourself in corruptible means, the consequences were unimaginable. And every citizen in Singapore knew that. I don't need to labor the point. You know now, Professor, where Singapore is. And they believed this symbol. Symbol doesn't mean simplicity. You know, there's a difference. Jesus was simple. He said, follow me. And the disciples followed. A simple word. All of these complications from Africa, these are simplicity. There's a difference. We must be simple, develop pillars that can catapult Africa and catapult it in the middle and finally into a developed continent like others in the West. And that cannot just happen, Prof. We must work on it. And that's why I was on attribute number 1. We must acquire it. And as a continent agree, we must be resilient. To be
yes, Dr. Joseph.
Yes.
Allow me to chime in. These 3 pillars you brought about from Singapore are very powerful indeed. They are life-changing for any society or government that implements them will but have no other option except seeing their country develop and grow massively. But then, as you were speaking, something came to my mind. You're talking about earlier on that leaders that do have a vision, a clear-cut vision for their country to develop and grow, etc., do not live long. And as you brought that up, something came to my mind. Why is that we Africans, or most Africans, do not stand for the leaders who have a clear-cut vision for the country? Why do we so easily buy ideas from, let me say, from quote unquote, from the West? Why do we so easily buy ideas from the media that do tarnish our leaders and we rise up against them? Just to, I don't know if this would be a good example for our viewers, but let's look at Libya, for example, as a case study. And the Libya during Gaddafi's time and the Libya we have today, it seems to be they're totally different countries. And just to give an example, why is we just can't stand, we can't support our leaders, we can't just be there for them. We just hear something outside, we just buy it and rise up and all that, and then the rest is history. Why do we do that? Because it seems to be a common trend in Africa. Someone tells us that this president is a dictator, we just buy it, and we go against. But then when he's no more there, either dead or maybe somewhere in seclusion, we see, wow, we had a good man in power. I mean, he at least loved us. Why are we so like that? And how can we Africans change that and be able to stand for our own regardless?
And Prof, we have, there's what we call self-incrimination. We have decided to be slaves of other people, and we serve several masters. That is why we say you serve more than one master. Here, Africans, most of them pretend that they are for Africa, but you find that they're serving other masters from abroad. They do not know that they are as important as those who are using them. And that is why I used the word I used from the beginning of the dominion mandate. Until we acquire the mindset of dominion, we will be used. You know, they were cheated that Gaddafi was a dictator. Tell me, I, as a Christian, Jesus had to over direction. He used to tell his disciples, follow me. Isn't it, Mateus? Isn't it? What was wrong with with Gaddafi showing his people the direction? So people were cheated. The guy is a dictator because they saw with Gaddafi's vision, Africa was likely to be a force to recognize, to reckon with, and they had to move in quickly to end his life. It is unfortunate that the person at the reign, you know, the president of the United States, and when reached a point we must
We are sort of losing you, Dr. Joseph, and I will need you to repeat your thoughts from a minute ago because we are somehow losing you. I'm sure this should be connection challenges. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful. You are back. Wonderful. Yes.
You know what I was talking about is Jesus was a strong leader.
Mm-hmm.
He uses not also to compromise with his disciples. He used to say, follow me.
Yeah.
And they used to obey. What was wrong with Gaddafi and his citizens follow me? But they from the West. Why? In Africa, most of them suffer from maybe you can experiment. If you gather black crabs and put them on a bottle which is open on the top, you can go to safari for a whole week. You can come back and find crabs in the bottle. When one crab tries to escape, the others pull it down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to cock it from the top. You find them there. And because the West have realized that, they sponsor the other people. Now they pull the strong leaders down. Yes, they conspired. You look at strong leaders, they don't live long. And that's why we say it has to reach a point now that with all the resources we have, we must build a competitive advantage. And we cannot build a competitive advantage until we are traced to be number one, which we are still discussing. Resilience.
Let me ask you this question, Professor, because we they accuse our leaders from being visionary leaders from being dictators, and one of the reasons or excuse the reason one of the reasons they used to second that our leaders, African leaders, are dictators. I am talking about visionary leaders. They bring in the issue of democracy. For example, they'll tell you that Gaddafi has been in power for such a long time. There is no democracy, or there was no democracy in Libya. So that is dictatorship. How do you look at that? In the past, we used to have the political leadership of Africa was more into kingdoms, right, and chiefdoms. Now, the West brought into us the more quote unquote democracy as probably, according to them, the best way of political governmental leadership. and then the one that's keep on shifting every 5 years, 3 to 4, 4 to 5 years, have someone else in power. And there's something that now comes to my mind. I remember Mugabe was the late Robert Mugabe was once asked in an interview, I think it was in England, why is that he was in power for such a long time now. And the answer he gave when I saw that interview made me think. He said, why don't you ask why is now the late Queen Elizabeth in power for such a long time? She can be in power for such a long time. I'm now paraphrasing, and that's not a problem. But once an African leader is in power for some time, more than 5 years at least, or 10 years, you guys come and call this dictatorship. Now, I just brought this as a parallelism, just for I want to hear your thoughts on this one.
Prof, Professor, by the way, if I had power myself as Joseph, I will follow very little from the democracy of the West.
Okay.
As a continent, we must grow our own way of leading ourselves. Let me ask you, how many members of parliaments of China do you know? Just give me one name. How many? Just look at China. Let us not even go far. To answer your question, we have blindly emulated a system that does not work in Africa and is imposed on us. We are on. We must evolve our own system. Even scientists, especially doctors, will tell you that when someone has been hungry for so long, you just don't bring a lot of food. You start, it begins to, it takes a little fluid. If, by the way, you feed someone who has been hungry for a week with a full meal, like the one you will take after now, or if you have taken, you will just die.
Yeah, it's going to harm me. Yeah, I see.
Yes. If then we had to emulate the Western democracy, then it had to go little by little. If anything, it has caused a lot of havoc in the continent. And that is how they wanted it to be. It's a designed method. We need our own homegrown way of leading our people, all ourselves. I don't agree, of course, with the little positive attributes of democracy. It is up to us to see which aspect to borrow, but not to emulate the entire system that cannot work in Africa. And that's why we are to come together as African states and discuss what is the best way of harnessing our resources, develop a competitive advantage, and become a developed continent. But we are continually being divided, and they are doing it deliberately to continue using resources from Africa. I'm telling you, resources from Congo itself. Congo itself can feed the entire world for years and decades. But look at DRC with conflict after conflict. That is by design. By design. Yes. So, Professor, I think we are still on sustainable strategies to develop Africa. Maybe our viewers are listening. What we're trying to say is developing a strategy is not a much issue here, because African people, they are intelligent, they can. But In which environment? That's what we say, first things first. We can develop strategies, but if we have not developed in a way that we take advantage of our competitive advantage, we still go back to step one. That is why we're trying to acquire competitive attributes. A team cannot become competitive if it does not play in a cohesive manner. And that's why attribute number one, we have to be resilient. And the resilience here abroad, the issue of cohesiveness and the coherence. And I said, being cohesive without being coherent is like having a body without a soul. So we need both. We need both. We have to be cohesive. You know, you can be cohesive, and the coherent now is as a demographic continent or state. You must develop political systems. That's where coherence now comes in. So we must be both cohesive and coherent. Acquire that attribute. When now we are together, we have developed a system which is a citizens. Now
Dr. Joseph, I think I'm losing you.
getting me? Getting me?
I can't hear you. Think,
Are you
can you hear
getting
me?
me?
Yes, now it's better. Yes, we're back.
Yes. I apologize.
It is well. I understand. I'm sure viewers also do understand this.
The devil doesn't want us to discuss these issues, but we will be resilient. So, Prof, I think, can I move to attribute two?
Yes, sir.
Do you have
Yes,
any
please, please.
issue there?
Okay. Let's move to number two.
So, okay. I think we said, okay, therefore, we must attribute experience. Efficiency.
Come again. The second is diligence, right? We are sort of losing you, Dr. Joseph, again. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes. Number two, you said that's diligence.
No, not diligence. Efficiency. To be
Oh,
vision.
efficiency. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Sorry. Yeah, please go on. We having challenges. Efficiency,
are you getting
right?
me? Are you getting me?
Yes, may you start from the efficiency. Think the internet's
Yes,
not helping much
efficiency.
from that side.
Yes, if we look at Africa, I don't know how it's Mozambique. Generally, look at African countries. There is a problem of utilizing the scarce resources. if we cannot be visioned in managing the resources, it is futile to begin to develop the resources. So that is why we need to acquire the act of efficiency. How we need to use our resources optimally for the benefit of the people of Africa. You see, we need to get this thing. It's not simply coming up with a paper, a strategic paper, and we want to do this. This is the problem that happens in Africa. We must acquire specific attributes of what we be. Do you know the Professor Mutola? A lot of wastage. We waste resources, we squander resources, we steal, we are corrupt. We can even acquire resources, dying in palaces when our people are dying of hunger. Do you know, as we speak now, Professor, there are people dying out of hunger?
Yes, sir. Right.
And there are people with plenty that they even don't know what to do with it. It is heartbreaking. So we cannot even begin to think on how we need to come up with strategies without acquiring this critical attribute. Efficiency. Of process. Meaning, in short, using resources optimally for the benefit of the people. So that must live in a civil life, a life of dignity. And that is the centerpiece of the philosophy of civility.
Yeah.
Is
Professor Dr. Joseph, we can't hear you now. We are definitely losing you this time. Are you able to hear me? Because I'm losing you.
Are you getting me?
Yes, but I need you to repeat as we're building on efficiency, because since we began to tackle that second point, your internet has been getting you a lot of off and on, and we miss most of your intervention.
I don't know if it's getting worse, whether I will change. Let's try if it persists, then I will change into something. So anyway, what I was talking about is it's the second attribute we need to acquire. The optimal usage of African resources for the benefit of its people. Why for the benefit of its people? So that people live a dignified life. And when you see your neighbors live a dignified life, then you assist them to do so by using resources optimally for their benefit. Then you are living a civil life, a life of civility, then now you are civilized. Otherwise, civilization began from Africa, but we are the laughing stock of the West because of wastage of the resources. Professor, then of what use trying to develop strategies to develop Africa when 3/4 of the people, or 90%, they live below poverty lines? So we must acquire these attributes. That is the second attribute, which will lead to competitive advantage. Because if you don't acquire it, Professor, then whether you begin to add value to gold or diamond or what, you will just waste it. And it will not develop, it will not benefit the people it intended to. Because we must protect this continent for the future generation. As the people from the East believe, especially India, where they say, I repeat, we have not inherited this nation from our ancestors. We have borrowed from our children.
That's
What do you
profound, sir.
do? What do you do when you borrow something? You have to return it. Not only just return it, but with interest. And let Africa know that. The leaders in power must know we have borrowed this continent from our children. We must return it back with interest. How do you return it with interest when you want to impoverize it? You return it back with interest if you acquire the attribute of efficiency, conserve the resources, build on it. The population is increasing so that every citizen born in any country in Africa benefit from the endowed resources given by Almighty God. Attribute number 2. So can I move to number 3?
Yes, but maybe just before you do that, sir, maybe if you can have this question, why exactly is that most African leaders or political leaders do not use their resources for the benefit of their fellow countrymen? Like I earlier one quoted Samara Machel used to say that the resources found in Mozambique must first and foremost serve Mozambicans and Mozambique. But most African leaders do not have this in mind. They may verbalize it, but in reality, when it comes to action, you see totally the opposite. The resources do not seem to benefit the locals and the nationals. They seem to benefit outsiders. Why do we have this tendency for most African political leaders? The resources are not used to benefit the locals, but they do benefit the outsiders. Why is that, sir?
Professor, because first of all, you have given them a very big name, leaders. You know, that is a very, you know who's a leader. But before that, let me summarize them with one word: greedy. There will be no enough resource. There is enough resources for everyone in the entire Africa. The entire population of Africa, there is enough resources. Professor, surprisingly, there isn't enough resources for one greedy leader.
That's profound. That's profound. There is enough resource for every African in Africa,
Yes.
but there is not enough resources for any great leader. My goodness.
That
That's
is the
profound,
thing.
sir.
Is ego. They are not leaders. In fact, we are uplifting them to levels they don't deserve. There is one, God rest his soul in eternal peace. I love him, Miles Monroe. He defines leadership as the capacity to influence others through inspiration, generated by passion, motivated by vision, parted by conviction, and produced by purpose. Are they even convicted? Professor, these leaders, do they have conviction? Do they? They don't. Do they have vision? They don't. Do they understand what progress means? They confuse motion with progress. You know, there is a difference.
I get you, sir. I get you, sir.
So the issues are deep, sir. Professor, deep. Which sometimes, if you don't have a strong heart, these issues, problems in Africa may sink your heart. Because we have produced people we call leaders without character. And that's the essence. We have produced the charismatic leaders without conviction, powerful leaders without principles, visionary leaders without values. You know, you can be very visionary, Professor, you can be very visionary, but you have no values. We put all the
I am losing you again, Dr. Joseph.
Yes. So what we are saying is that, you see, what
Come again, sir. We are on the verge of losing, we are losing Dr. Joseph again. But we are still discussing point number 2. You're back, Dr. Joseph.
Yes, sorry, sir. You know, I said that the devil may work tirelessly, but we are not ready. We are not ready to leave. We must finish.
That's right.
We must finish. Because I wonder how happens today that my internet has never... Anyway, what we were talking about, Professor, is that we should not look at the issues in an isolated manner. And when we talk of even a visionary leader, that's not enough. Because you can be visionary, but you are not, you don't have values.
Values.
And you hear people talk of Africa as 80% are Christians, but you can be very religious, but no conscious. You know that? You can be very professional, but no morality. You can be very charismatic, but no conviction. You can be very powerful, but you don't have principles.
That's right.
And that is why we need a conversation like this one, so that we separate the wheat from the chaff. The wheat from the chaff. and we understand the problem facing Africa. Because I don't know, you go and read Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 14 to 17, that the voice of a poor man is not heard, even if his wisdom could save cities. If you read the context of the Ecclesiastes, that is what it is saying. And the West they know that. That is why they want us to go to school, learn, be PhD holders with the theories. And they know if you don't they will still manipulate you. That's why Christians say the voice of a poor man is not heard. He is despised, even if his wisdom could save cities. You go to give a talk in the United Nations headquarters, you are from Africa, you have nothing. They will clap, you think they are clapping at you, they will say, look at a poor chap pretending to be educated, but he sleeps in he sleeps in the slums. So we need to educate our people to go beyond simply going into a classroom to acquire knowledge of little value and begin a new narrative of developing Africa for the sake of our future generation. In fact, Professor, we need to readdress this issue of education. I didn't tell you that I have started a program. I talked to some professors in one of the universities and we agreed. I asked them a question: what are your research papers doing on the shelves or in the library? So we want to begin a program. We remove one research paper, we remove from the library to the field. And this professor was really laughing. He said he has never heard that. Yes, how can we be cheated? You do research, you being called a professor or a doctor, for what value? Dr. Miles Monroe used to say, a leader is not known by the medals on the chest, but by the scar or the star at the back. What is the point, Professor, of holding just a medal, Dr. So and so? So what? That is why Miles used to say, a leader is not known by the medals he's having on the chest, but by the star or the scar at the back. Be the star of your people, not to put the medals on the chest. Let the star be from your back so that you can lead them. So that is the challenge to the scholars of Africa. What are they doing in the university? Why can't we have a program, 1 month in the university, another month in the village? Yes, implementing your researches in the village. By the way, an inspiration came to me. I have an idea that each person who is exposed, especially all of the professors, there's what I call adopting a village. Professor Mutola, you go to your village, adopt it. Because your people are so poor, In Africa, where I come from, for example, if somebody is so vulnerable, a child is so vulnerable, those who are able can adopt the child. The villages are now so poor. Why can't we professionals come together and they say each person go back to village and adopt it? If you get any challenge, we will help you. Go to your village, sir. Implement your adopt it. I've convinced one friend. He has adopted his village. I have adopted mine. We are in the course of completing our small project in our small way. Yes. So we must come up with strategies which fit Africa and work. You know, those people are so vulnerable. They are poor. They need new thoughts. They have same methods of farming. Where are the agriculture professors? They should be domiciled in the villages. What are they doing in the classroom? If I became the president, I would spread all the scholars across the republic. If you are a professor of agriculture, you would be domiciled in the agricultural zones, whether in your village, whatever thesis you wrote. Are you getting me, sir?
Yes, I do really get you, because what I'm picking from your discussion right now is that we Africans have been miseducated somehow, and we are not trained to identify and even solving our local problems, and we are just trained to be maybe somehow or mostly intellectuals, have the thoughts, the ideas, but we lack where implementation is really needed and needful. That's why you find that even in my country, you find that uh, agricultural technicians and professionals or graduates, they just move and stay work in the offices and not in the field mostly. And that doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, we all need to eat, and the country does not produce because the people trained for that I just want to work in the offices. And now maybe my next question would be, Dr. Joseph, how can we correct, should I say correct, or uh, spice up or even change the system of education? Because the current system of education, it seems not to help us Africans uh, build our country, our continent, and ourselves. It's like it instills more self-doubt than anything else in ourselves. It's like I go to school, I go to college, but at the end of the day, I have no purpose, no clarity, no direction, no sense of identity. It's like I'm lost. And then I ran maybe for applying for jobs and all that, but in the process, somehow I become selfish in the sense that I just care about myself and nobody else. You're talking about the need to for our leaders, or those in power, to love Africans, to use the resources for the benefit of their fellow citizens and the continent as a whole. But in most African countries, we don't see that. And sometimes I feel that the system of education, in and by itself, does imprison us, like puts us in a casket, in a box, so to speak, and wants to keep us inside the box. You can't even peep your head out. You gotta stay in the box. And that's what they do their best. So we may even break about our titles, but at the end of the day, we are not moving. There is, we don't have the 2 points to put about. We are not resilient and we're not efficient at the end of the day. So how can we avert this? How can we change this so we become resilient. We become efficient, but through the system of education.
Um, uh, you see,
Because
Professor Matthews,
sorry, don't lose your thought. In Mozambique, for example, for you to have your first degree, like your first degree, from the first day you go to school, we are talking about a period of 16 years, 12 years to reach a high school diploma or certificate, then 4 more years for college. So they put in a box for 16 years. And one thing that pains me a lot when I'm watching TV during the graduation ceremonies, when the TV presenter or interviewer is asking the new graduate, uh, what's your next step? 99.9% will tell you, I don't know. Others will say, that's when I'm applying for a job, trying my lucky. So you are trained for 16 good years, and then you don't know what you're going to do next after all the training you've gone through. So somehow we are trained to be in a box. We're trained to be obedient or submissive, regardless. We're trained to follow a particular system. You can't go the opposite way. You can't contradict the system. You have to comply. Just comply and comply and comply. So at the end of the day, we're like more, like we're saying, like puppets, so to speak. Then how to change that before you go into your third point?
uh, I think, Professor, I don't know whether I will call it education. There is a difference between schooling and education. Being schooled and being educated. Because we say education is what remains after you have forgotten what you learned in school.
Love that.
The question is, are these people educated? In fact, in Africa, I think we are misusing the word education. We are schooling people. We are schooling our citizens instead of educating them.
Mm,
So let's get the difference. To be schooled is to follow certain procedural way of acquiring knowledge, whether of value or not. That is why Professor Pierre Lehman said, education is not confined on time and space. It is a constant search for knowledge founded on insatiable curiosity.
mm,
In fact, he told his students, I hope you didn't come here to be dogmatic, because education, I'm repeating, is not confined on time and space. It is a constant search for knowledge founded on insatiable curiosity.
mm, mm.
So we must be curious to look at the world. How are things unfolding?
Right.
Sorry, Professor, you lost me again? Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? I'm here.
You see, Professor, it's good that you asked me the question is that how happens that people finish school and a journalist or an interviewer from a TV station asks, what's your next step? It doesn't. That's why the professor cautioned the people. You have to be curious to see how the world is unfolding and they follow as things are, not the way you, let me tell you, of what value as a high school student asked a multiple choice question, how many times do Muslims pray in a week? Of what value is that? Whether I get it right, I get an A. Of what value and significance will it have to the real life situation? So you find people with distinction answered the question correct. How many times Muslims pray in a week? Ask yourself that. Those are questions for African students. Can you imagine, Professor? That's why he said, you must see how the world is unfolding, identify the opportunity for your people, and capitalize on it. Because education is only there to help you refine your gift. But people think that the education now should be used to bring food on the table. No.
I love that.
Education only should be used to refine your gift, which you are supposed to serve to the people of the world. If I'm an African, let me say this, by the way, Professor. I am myself, I, Joseph, I am a solution to a question God knew could be asked in my generation. I am a solution to a question God knew could be asked in my generation. So to you, each citizen is a solution to a question God knew could be asked in his or her generation. And
That's
let
profound.
each African citizen stand up and answer the question.
That's profound. That's profound.
This is it. They are a musician in Mozambique. If they get hold of the guitar, people will cry. That is their purpose. The question, the solution they were born to provide in their generation. And we must have leadership to inspire people. Each passion is valuable in its own way. That is why I believe myself. Me mean a solution. And I must answer the question which God told me to answer. And that's why we're in this summit, to tell our fellow Africans, it is time to rescue Africa. We are now answering, Professor, me and you and I. That's why we are in this summit today. Prof, yes, I believe so. Professor, mute.
Oh,
You are the
thank
one
you,
who was
thank you.
muted.
Oh yes, thank you, sir, so much. I was just saying thank you so much for your thoughts you just brought in right now. And I like what you were just saying when you talked about education is there to help me refine my gifts, which I'm gonna have to use these gifts to be able to serve humanity and not just to pay my bills. And I was saying that many people, when they finish university in Maputo, in Mozambique, actually, they run, they try to apply for jobs, they can't find their jobs, they can't get jobs, then they fall into depression because all along they were told, go to school, study, get a degree, and get a job. And they've been programmed for job finding, job getting. And when they can't get this job, they get depressed. Some even commit suicide. Others need to be attended by psychologists because they're in profound state of depression because they can't find a job. And I was saying that somehow I think this was uh, uh, promoted by colonial masters and slave owners who told their slaves and their that they have to allow the kids to go to school to be someone, and this being someone, quote unquote, meant to say be like us, the colonial masters. And somehow I think that's what the slaves back then, those were in slavery and those were under colonial masters, began to bring this from their masters to their children, that you got to go to school, study, and graduate and like to be someone and to get a job. Now, maybe as we go into your third point, maybe in a few seconds or so, could you help our viewers understand how to divorce ourselves from this mentality that uh, going to school will solve all my problems, in and all, in and all, and in and all by itself. Like if I go to school, then all my issues and challenges are solved. Because once again, I think in most African countries, the system of education is programmed to get people in the box, and we are trained to follow a system and not to think in and by ourselves. Like it's like our thoughts do not count. For example, in my country, if I'm doing a thesis, like a thesis, and I am not allowed to disagree with, let me say, there's this great thought leader, let me say, for example, scientist, let me say, for example, Albert Einstein. In my thesis, in my academic career, I'm not allowed to say I don't agree with Albert Einstein and this and that line. In other words, we are grabbed and taught to follow just one line of thinking, and somehow this again uh, keeps us in the box. So by the time I finish university, I can't think for myself, and I'm not confident in my own ideas and thoughts. So it's like I have, then that will somehow further push me into following the system. Now, in a few seconds before you go into the third point, how can our students, and African students, African youth, divorce themselves from such a thought line? Because I was watching, reading your bio, one of the things you are passionate about is to help young people, divorce themselves from mediocrity. So somehow this line of the system keeps us mediocre, you know. So how to help people get rid of that?
Um, you know, do you know? I hope you remember the pillar I talked from Singapore.
Yes.
It is surprising, Professor, that even our scholars do not want us to be pragmatic. Pragmatism is if the theory someone holds, he believes it works, must be allowed to pursue it into its conclusion. And this is the problem. In fact, I posed a question when I went to give a lecture in one of the universities here in my country. I asked some lecturers, when a student you mark him wrong on a certain theory which you told him to write about, how do you know whether he does not agree, he has rebelled? You see, how do you know that the fact that
Yeah.
he didn't get, how do you tell that he just rebelled against the theory and wrote his way of thinking? How do you know? They were quiet. And that is why the Professor Layman told the fellows, this education we are giving our people, it is not confined on time and space. Allow curiosity in the learners to a level which is unsatisfied, so that they bring new things which were never foreseen by those you are forcing them to follow their theories. That's why I say it's not confined on time and space. It's a constant search for knowledge founded on insatiable curiosity. On a curiosity you cannot satisfy. So when you see a student with a different thinking, you need to have a conference, a discussion. In fact, he used to say, when your student comes up with a new thinking, a new narrative, you immediately become a student.
Right.
But because of ego, many of our scholars will not allow.
Right.
They will tell you they have been teaching the university for the last 30 years. I told some of them, you don't have 30 years of experience if you have not discussed new knowledge. You
That's
have
right.
one experience repeated 30 times.
Eish.
1 year experience repeated 30 times. Is that 30 years experience, Professor? So, if we must discover new knowledge which will be beneficial to African continent, we must allow young minds to be innovative. Anything you see puts forth, be inquisitive. That is why the professor said, immediately you see a new idea you have never seen from your student, the roles change immediately. You become a student. He becomes your lecturer. That is how you will gain on a reciprocal manner. But because of ego, our professors cannot allow. That's why they make sure very few students go through to have PhD. This is an ego problem. And that
That's
is, in
right.
fact,
That's right. I see.
another area needs to be addressed in Africa. That's why I say that what are the professors doing in the university? They should be in the field. That's why they should come. Yeah. That's what I could say, Professor.
Thank you so much, Professor. Doctor, let's move to your third point and then fourth one. We are now left with a few minutes. This is a very profound conversation. The insights we're bringing into this summit is definitely very life-changing. But I'm very curious to know about the next 2 points, the third one and the fourth one. We have the first one, which is resilient. We have the second one, which is efficiency. Now let's hear about the third and the fourth pillars, which are or attributes that going to help Africa build, grow, and become a very sustainable continent. Over to you, sir.
Now, you see, these initiatives for competitive advantage go in that order. Now, the third one now is what we call initiative. Initiative, which is in fact the entrepreneur risk-taking side of human endeavor. Creativity now. You see, it is initiative. Now, once the society is now cohesive and coherent, now you have initiated mechanisms for efficiency. Now you are not fearful about the leakages of resources of your continent or your country. Now you can, with full enthusiasm, initiate, create, innovate. That's why we call it initiation, the initiative, the entrepreneur side of human endeavor, adding value, creating, enterprising, so that you multiply resources, because now there is no fear of leakages, and they produce in abundance. Starting manufacturing, initiating, looking at opportunities, taking advantage, spread across the world to sell now your products which you have added value, your services which you have added value. And this must be carried by Africans themselves. We build the top entrepreneurs now to carry our abundant resources which we have added value, not to allow people to come to Africa to mine. This must be mined by our entrepreneurs. Are you getting me, Prof?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yes. So that attribute we must acquire it. In short, we're talking of enterprising gift must be harnessed and nurtured in Africa. Why do you allow people to come and explore oil in Africa? I mean, are we so daft that we can't do that? We need an enterprising mind, innovative mind. Yes. That is all about the third attribute.
Initiative. Then we go to the fourth one. But just before we go to the fourth one, it's interesting what you just mentioned to say. We, in the days, as I did my research, because I was still growing, I was still a child, a baby back then. I heard in the radio that Samora Machel, our first president after independence, used to act like this. He used to say, like I said earlier on, that the resources in Mozambique, they must first and foremost benefit Mozambicans and the country and the nation as a whole. And then, whenever there was a need to have an outside professional or expert come and work here and help, this is what Samara used to say or do. You are coming to help us. We don't want you to come and do the work yourself. We want you to train locals who will hand the job after you go. And this guy, this expert will come from his country, let me say it's in mining, help doing the job there, but train locals. And Samora Michelle will give them a time. Let me say it's a 1 year contract. So in 1 year, you need to train, let me say 20 people. They have to master this in 1 year. And after that, would ask this guys, the experts to go. But somehow this changed a lot. Experts come and dwell, they come to abide, and they're the ones who know the job. So I love what you brought about initiative, because this somehow will divorce us from dependence, toxic dependence on outsiders. which is very common in most African countries. So I wanted to highlight that one and say, yeah, this key or this attribute is really powerful and needful in Africa. Opening doors and encourage initiative will definitely be a game changer in most of African states. So let's move to number 4, sir. The last
Yeah,
one.
to add that on what you have talked about being dependent,
Yes.
we usually, Rockefeller said that charity is injurious to a recipient unless he becomes independent of it.
Nice. Powerful.
Yes, let me tell you, charity has more disadvantage than advantages. Africans, they
Right.
had better know that. It is more injurious to whoever receives the charitable donations unless those who receive them are become immediately independent of them.
Yeah.
And the West have mastered that art to continue to bring the charitable, being charitable, philanthropic, as a way of making Africa to depend on them. That is why I have deliberately brought this aspect of initiative, the enterprising human mind of Africans, the risk-taking side of human endeavor of Africans, so that they teach people on how to create, not how to receive donation. For me, donation is negative. In fact, we need to do away with it. We need even to legislate. The greatest enemy for African development is free lunch from West. The last one, which is the fourth one, and the most important, is good leadership. I'm not talking about leadership. Good leadership. And it is intentionally, we have intentionally put the fourth one so that whoever is at the helm becomes the steward of all these other attributes to ensure the citizens follow this so that we get the competitive advantage. Like your former leader, Michelle, no Western powers could wish such a leader to continue being in Africa because he could offer good leadership so that Africans could become initiators, innovators, enterprising, harness their resources, add value, and conquer the whole world. After all, civilization began in Africa, not just Africa, the southern part of Africa, where you are part of it, by the way. I don't know whether you know that. Yes?
That's interesting, sir.
So, don't lose the word good. I'm not talking of leadership. You hear people talk of leadership. There are leaders who are negative. You can lead people into opposite direction. Yes. What is leading? What does the Bible say? How can the blind lead the blind? Listeners, don't miss the word good. Good leadership. Because we have been talking of leadership. To which direction? You know, leading is taking a lead towards a direction. Which direction are they moving to? Professor, you know, I didn't tell you what inspired me to be so passionate on issues concerning with inspiration. I was inspired by one poet called the English poet John Donne.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "No man is an island entirely on itself. Every man is a piece of the continent,
Mm.
a part of the main. The death of any man diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. Never ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Before the bell tolls on you, let it be your wake-up call." John Donne, the English poet. You
Right.
know what he was saying? I put in context, every African citizen is a part of the main, the African continent. And
Right.
when we see any one of them suffering either from hunger or a poverty or a death as a result of disease, it diminishes me as a person. And when you hear in the funeral people crying, that is like a bell tolling. Don't ask people none who has died. The bell is tolling on you, Professor, and it is tolling on me. African leaders, those who have impoverished the citizens of Africa, going by the words of the poet John Donne, the bell is tolling on us. And before it tolls on us, let it be our wake-up call and begin to develop the sustainable strategies to transform Africa. Particularly, let's follow the 4 initiatives and develop competitive advantage and harness, initiate, innovate, add value to our natural resources for the benefit of the African citizens. And by so doing, we shall lead the whole world. After all, civilization started in Africa.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Joseph. This has been a very interesting, powerful, wonderful, and a great learning experience. I'm sure that those that were with us on live and those that will follow the replay of this conversation will definitely learn a lot. There's been a wonderful moment, and myself, I've learned a lot. I've taken some notes here, and thank you so much for giving yourself time to be part of this summit. I know you're a very busy man. I've been following your work on social media, YouTube, the videos you send me, and today, hearing you like directly on this show or summit has given me a different and another view of how we Africans ought to commit ourselves to our continent, but also to each other or one another as people of Africa. Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph, for your time. I don't know if you have any last closing remarks for maybe 30 seconds or so, but I do appreciate your time from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sure our viewers also have learned a lot, have gleaned a lot from your insight as they pertain to the development of Africa, especially the 4 attributes, maybe call them keys you have left, because they also work as a strategy for building a different continent.
You are muted. You are muted. Check your mute. Professor, you are muted.
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry, sir.
Yes.
So, thank you so much. I was saying this: these 4 keys have left: resilient, efficiency, initiative, and a good leadership. Basically, this is what our continent, our leaders do need. We need as Africans to be able to take our country, our countries, and also the continent to the next level. I love what you kept on saying. That civilization began in Africa. I love that so much. And you also say that we have enough resources for every African in the continent to have a wonderful, great life. We have enough. So these are the two things you kept emphasizing as you were discussing, making the presentation here. And the way you built on resistance, resilience, on efficiency, initiative, and the good leadership is very profound. So thank you so much once again. And I want to ask you for maybe closing remarks just before we close the meeting for today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mateus Mutola. It's my privilege. You gave me a chance to share with my fellow African citizens. Remember this. It's good that I end up with what we experience in the jungle in Africa. In Africa, when a gazelle wakes up every morning, it must run faster than the fastest lion. Otherwise, it will be caught and killed. And when the lion also wakes up, it must outrun the slowest gazelle. Otherwise, it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you are a gazelle or the lion. When the morning comes, my fellow Africans, start running. Otherwise, your life is in danger. Let's begin to run. The lion here could be synonymous to a leader. Start running. And if we do so, both all of us as citizens and leaders, we shall transform Africa. Thank you very much for listening to me. And my host, Professor Mateus, is my privilege. And I want to caution them that please let us change the mindset. And mindset is not reflected through talking. Mindset is reflected through movement or action. You can never detect the mindset of a person by the way he talks. The mindset of a person is reflected in the way he moves or he acts. So action is the key for Africa's sustainable development. Thank you very much, sir, and may God bless you.
My appreciation, sir. Thank you so much. I'm going to definitely have you back into our other shows here in the programs of the Africa Civility Show. Thank you so much, Dr. Joseph, and God bless you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the close of our show for today. We had a wonderful time with Dr. Joseph. He brought about 4 mind-changing strategies for changing and building a very sustainable Africa. Number 1, he talked about efficiency. Number 2, Dr. Joseph brought up the issue of resilience. Number 3, initiative. And number 4, good leadership. Thank you so much. God bless you. We are coming back tomorrow at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. CAT, but also at 12 p.m. PST and 3 p.m. EST. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.